two dicks. Wow.
Yeah! Here we go! Here we go! Here we go!
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the OneIQ Football Talk podcast.
And having to go, yeah, but he did kind of do this.
What I'm hearing is you just want Tom Brady dead. Like that's all I'm hearing at this point. You just want Brady
Well,
dead.
not anymore. He's retired now, so I'm good with that. I don't want him calling games anymore because holy hell, he's hard to listen to.
Enough angry and, depressing from myself. Sterling, thank you for being able to sit there as my therapist for this episode.
Start the game already!
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the OneIQ Football Talk podcast. Brendan and Sterling coming at you after a little bit of a bye week last week, as some busyness ultimately caused us to kind of not be able to do it, and some tiredness also caused some of the times where we were scheduled to just be like, and no thank you. But we are back. Thank you for hanging out with us again. How you doing, Sterling?
Doing good. And, that's exactly why we sort of gave you guys that heads up that, we're heading into that busy season. We may see 1 or 2 more weeks of this happen over the course of the season until we reach the new year. So it just, such is life. But other than that, I'm good. I mean, we're past mid-October. The weather's still kind of nice here. We still got some great football going on. It's wicked. I'm loving it.
I don't like how you're talking about the weather and saying it's still relatively good, because if it snows in the next couple of days, I'm punching you. Just know. I know where I know where you work.
Yeah.
And so obviously coming into this stretch of the season, we are vastly approaching trade deadline.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to have this discussion a little bit more last week, but again, unfortunately for us, timing just didn't work. So we are going to be having our trade discussion this week. And I think it's actually better that it is this week, because it's going to be a little bit more targeted and a little bit actually closer to some of the stuff. There is some other things that we will talk about a little bit later down the line, but obviously the trade conversation is going to be fairly dominant, and one of the trades that I want to, or one of the players that I want to talk about that has been heavily discussed in trade conversation is Alvin Kamara. And pretty much since week 1 of preseason, Alvin Kamara has been one of those guys that we ultimately kind of looked at and went, this is a guy that we could very easily see be traded from the New Orleans Saints, just because they're going to be a bad team, and why not get something for him? And pretty immediately last week, he came out and stated, someone asked him, like, hey, would you be like, what would you do if you got traded? And he goes, I know this is a business, the NFL, and this would be a business decision. It's not that the Saints saying that they don't like me, that they need to try to find value, but I would love for at least someone in the front office to come down and tell me that they were going to be trading me. I don't have an office up there, so I don't know. I would love it to be open communication, but if they trade me, I'm going to go be sipping pina coladas, which essentially is him saying, if you trade me, I'm retiring. And as someone who wanted for a little bit Alvin Kamara on the Bears, I gotta give him a lot of respect, man, because we had so much trade conversation about him last season, and then he signed that extension where we're like, why? Like, why would you want to stay with this sinking ship? And I got to give the dude a lot of credit. He wants to stay in New Orleans his entire career, whether it's good or bad or anything in between. You brought up a good point. Probably has family out there where it's just like, what's the point? Like, I'm only going to be playing maybe 1 or 2 more seasons. If it's on this team that's just not very good, it's not like I'm not being paid generational wealth here at the moment. It's just so much easier to just stay here.
And I think that is ultimately it. He looks at it and goes, family's here. I'm not uprooting my family to go to another city to play for a year or 2. Like, I'm not sure how old his kids are, but I'm sure they're still in school at this point. Like, there's no... I can't fault him. If he was only like a 26 or 27-year-old running back, then I'd be like, dude, come on. Like, you don't want to end it now, but he's older. He's feels like he's done everything he wants to in his career, and he's just here for the ride at this point with the Saints. He's going down with this sinking ship and is happy to just be playing football and allowing his family to live their life. It strikes me as he's like, I'm gonna live here after I'm retired anyway. So if you trade me away, I'm just gonna retire and live here. Simple as that. And
Yeah.
so at least with that honesty and that upfront, that basically goes for the Saints. Okay, there's no point in trading him now.
Yeah. And I would be really shocked at this point if they even do go up to him and say, hey, like, would you like to go to this team or that team? And I think he, like, that statement alone is just like, just don't trade me, guys. Just leave
Yeah.
me here. And if you want to trade me, just tell me and I can make a decision at that point. But wanted to start with that right away because that felt like a really, really good kind of talking point. But then another an article came out that I stumbled across that I thought was really, really good in this instance because it opens up the conversation for a lot more players than we initially had in our mind for this. Dan Wilkins of The Score, a senior NFL writer, put together a great list. I highly recommend you going to watch that. I'll even throw the link down to it in the description below so you can take a little bit of a read for it. Give this guy a lot of credit because a lot of the players that we're talking about do potentially come from this list. Now, granted, not all of them do, and some of them we shared with the idea for. But yeah, it is ultimately a great list. We're not going to get through every single player that's talked or on this list because there's 30 guys. There have been 3 trades so far this year. Greg Newsome is acquired by the Jags from the Cleveland Browns. Tyson Campbell, the corner, goes back to the Browns. It's basically a 6th and a 7th round swap. The Chargers acquire Odafe Owu, edge rusher from the Baltimore Ravens, and the Ravens acquire Alu Gilman, and it's essentially a 7th and a 5th round swap. Owu has been great for the Chargers thus far,
Mm-hmm.
especially in last Thursday's game. He played great. And then the Bengals acquired Joe Flacco from the Cleveland Browns for a 5th round pick while also getting a 6th round pick back. So it's essentially just a little bit of a pick swap on that occasion. So
Mm-hmm.
those have been the major trades that have gone on thus far. But yeah, kind of going down through our list here. Let's start with a guy that basically asked for a trade without directly asking for a trade, and that's running back Breece Hall with the New York Jets. And at time of recording, the Jets are 0-7. Their owner Woody Johnson has decided to shit on Justin Fields to then have Justin Fields now be the starting quarterback again for this team. Breece Hall posted some stuff on Instagram where it was essentially saying he wants to be traded without saying he wants to be traded. It's one of those cryptic things us NFL fans get to gloriously see from players where it's like, trade me, but I'm not saying trade me, or I'm removing all of my stuff, blah, 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 blah. That's essentially what he did in this instance. But Breece Hall is one of those guys where we both looked at and said, this is a guy that should be traded. He's in the final year of his deal. The Jets, they're clearly going to be in a rebuilding situation, and Aaron Glenn has not been inclined to really show a lot of love or faith in Breece Hall, which is fucking insane to me because Breece Hall is essentially black Christian McCaffrey if you put him in the right scheme, but
Mm-hmm.
B, he's still young. It's not like he's an older running back.
Yeah, well, and that's just it. Like we've seen so little out of him this year, and there's so much talent being wasted. And as you said, the Jets are sitting at 0-7. Yes, Braylon Allen is hurt. He's on IR. He just underwent surgery, as far as I know, so he's likely not back for another 10 weeks at the earliest. But even then, like, who cares? Like, get something back for Breece Hall because your options at the end of the year are going to be um, does he have a 5th-year option that
No,
they
he
can
was
use?
a second round pick.
So it's going to be franchise tag or let him walk. And so you don't want to use a tag on a guy like this. And we've seen in the past, tagging running backs rarely works.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, the running back will just hold out and still find a job the next year because that just means he's got fresh legs. And it's honestly, this would be the best case scenario for the Jets. Just trade him away somewhere. He would be essentially a rental, which is scary because there are a couple teams that could really use a running back rental of that caliber that immediately propels them to be a Super Bowl favorite, in my opinion. And so it just it wouldn't shock me if the Jets don't, because the Jets are one of those organizations that almost bet against themselves.
Yeah.
They make dumb decisions. You know, they are one of the teams that we feel should be full sellers at the deadline. Jets, Browns, Dolphins, like they should all
Saints,
be sellers.
Raiders, yeah.
Yep.
There's a handful of teams that we're just looking at this year where it's just like, just give away the talent that you have, because what's the
Right.
point, man?
Yeah.
And
And I know for you even, you would love to see Brees Hall come to your Bears.
Yep.
You know, and I imagine that would be a situation where you, like the Bears, you'd almost be at that point going, yeah, we'll just send you DeAndre Swift back because then we can give Brees Hall that contract essentially, you know, and then some. And so that would be like a winning situation for the Bears for sure. If they can get something like that done and just switch Swift for Brees Hall, you still have Kyle Monangai, who has been improving week over week as your number two. That would be the best situation for not just you, but I think the rest of the league when you see one of the other teams that we've got that could be a landing spot for Brees Hall.
Yeah, and obviously talking about this from the Bears perspective, I've been saying I want Brees Hall on this Bears team because, again, we talk about him essentially being the black Christian McCaffrey. Ben Johnson is essentially he would be unlocking Brees Hall like Kyle Shanahan unlocked Christian McCaffrey. Now, Christian McCaffrey, before making his way over to the 49ers, had proven that he was exactly what he is, but it was just injuries that kind of slowed him down. And then he took that next level when he got to San Francisco. I think Brees Hall to Chicago with Ben Johnson, with that offensive line, with that play calling, it unlocks him in a way that similar to Christian McCaffrey. I don't think it's maybe as elevated as Christian McCaffrey was with Kyle Shanahan, because I do think Christian McCaffrey is the better running back, but it is one of those things where I'm like, man, like I would be hard pressed to not see Brees Hall be an elite running back in this offense. Hell, we've seen DeAndre Swift look like Saquon Barkley these last 2 weeks behind that O line, and there's a lot of concerns with DeAndre Swift, and it makes me think that the Bears might get a little too complacent with these last couple of games with this and go, we're not going to trade for a running back. DeAndre Swift is elite. And I mean, if he keeps playing like this, it's going to be hard to argue that point, which terrifies me. But yeah, again, with Brees Hall on the list right now, I know we have three teams in our buyer category. I think that second team that I have for us right there, I don't really think is a proper spot or landing spot for this team. But yeah, the other team that you're mentioning is the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
This is a team I think is on this come up where it's kind of like, oh, you guys thought we were bad. We just needed to get some pieces back. And if they go out there and get Brees Hall, the Chiefs are winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Because that's not even a trade where they have to trade and then give him a contract. That's literally them bringing him in going, look, you're going to win a Super Bowl this year, and then you can go find a job somewhere else because we can't afford you. Because we know the Chiefs don't have the space for that.
Nope.
But they can afford a guy on a rookie deal in his last year that will just make Patrick Mahomes' life so much easier.
Yeah, because Isaiah Pacheco is he's a good back. I'm not going to say he's a really good back, but he's definitely more of that, just hand me off the ball and I'm just going to fight the defender for extra yards. Brees Hall is that shifty, catches the ball out of the backfield. This is something that Mahomes has never had in his career, which is an elite do-it-all kind of running back. And yeah, that should terrify everyone. And again, Chiefs, That's literally just the rental. You can send the Jets a third round pick and be like, there you go, guys. This is our rental. We're not having to worry about it. Boom, 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 whatever. They move on. And of course, knowing the Chiefs, they would find a way to get him on a longer term contract anyways, because they would just somehow manage to have that. But yeah, Breece Hall is a really good guy that I think should be traded, but unfortunately I don't think he will be traded at the deadline because the Jets are fucking stupid.
Yep. Which means it'll be free for all to get him next year.
Yep. Next player up here on our list happens to be with another team that we think should just be sellers at the deadline, and that is tight end David Njoku with the Cleveland Browns, of where this team needs to kind of go on this wholesale rebuild. They have 2 first-round picks this year. You can do a lot with that, and David Njoku's not particularly young anymore, so you might as well try to send him to a team that can ultimately get a little bit more value out of him at this point. And so, yeah, I think David Njoku would be someone I could see this Browns team sending away.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that would be the smart move for them. They need to just sell and start thinking about the future. Like you said, 2 first-round picks this year. You're not going to get a first or even a second, probably not even a third for David Njoku, but adding in a 4th-round pick somewhere, that's not a bad thing. Maybe even a player back that is just not as good, but will fill a hole that you have. Nothing wrong with that. And there are some teams out there that are tight end needy right now. Chief among them being the 49ers, who are still trying to keep their Super Bowl window open. And they've been having injury issues. George Kittle finally came back from his injury last week and put up a goose egg. Didn't do anything.
Yep.
You need some tight end to help there in San Francisco. And that would be a great landing spot for a guy like David Njoku. He's a big target. He's a great route runner. It just would fit so well. Another team that's sort of on the rise is the Giants. They need some receiver help at any spot. They don't have Malik Neighbors anymore, and it is, as we've talked about a couple times, kind of like the new exciting whites. It's Jackson Dart, it's Cam Scatterbo, and that's sort of their one-dimensional offense. And due to it being so one-dimensional, that has really opened up the passing game for Jackson Dart. He's balling out to guys like Darius Slayton and making them look good. So can you imagine having a guy like David Njoku 15 yards down the field over the middle on those play actions to Cam Scatterbo? He's going to be wide open.
Yeah.
And that would just be great. And I think that would be another one where they're not going to have to spend a lot to get him, and he would fit into this offense really well. And then another team that I just added on here while we were talking is a team that really needs a tight end to fill out this offense, and that's the Denver Broncos. Giving the Denver Broncos a big target up the middle opens things up for J.K. Dobbins in the backfield, opens it up for Cortland Sutton down the field, makes it just that much easier for Bo Nix. And we know that Sean Payton likes having big tight ends. And so, there are a lot of good fits for David Njoku. The Cleveland Browns would be silly to not attempt to make a trade at the deadline.
Yeah, a couple of other teams that also look like team fits would be the Jags. They could look to add another pass catcher in that offense. The Buccaneers, again, you have Cade Otton, who last year was spectacular, but has been really slow to kind of get things going this year. You could make that a 2 tight end personnel with having, obviously, depending on who's out there, whether it's Emeka Egbuka as your number 1, because he pretty much is the number 1 receiver now in Tampa Bay, with whoever's going to be the number 2, kind of run with that. But also in Washington, again, Zach Ertz is ancient. And if the Commanders want to do anything of note for the remaining part of the year, you need to give Jane Daniels or whoever's going to be playing, whether it's Marcus Mariota or insert name here, you need to give them a little bit more. And one of the reasons why I do think the Browns would look to trade away David Njoku is Harold Fanning Jr. looks like he is without a doubt the future of this team at the tight end spot. They drafted him in the 3rd round last year. He was phenomenal in college. This is a guy that you can without a doubt build around, and I think would be really good. So it's it's time to move on from David Njoku, and I think this is a move that they will ultimately do. Next player on our list is one that I'm starting to think won't happen, and that is Trey Hendrickson, edge rusher. This was like we started making this list after week 4 for you and I. Like, I think it's fair to
Mhm.
say that we started making this list fairly early, and we've been slowly adding to it. And again, when this article came out, which again is going to be in the description below, check that one out. Um, Trey Hendrickson is also on their list as well, but this is a player where I think if the Bengals win this weekend, again, we're recording this on a Saturday like we do. This is our primary filming day. If they go out and win this weekend, the Bengals are going to be 4-4. They're clearly going to be looking better, and it's just one of those things where, like, man, like, I don't know if the Bengals will trade Trey Hendrickson, and Hendrickson looks like he's going to be out this week. So is a team going to trade for an injured 31-year-old at the edge rushing spot?
That's exactly it. And I mean, Trey Hendrickson has been on a lot of lists since training camp, really, because he was holding out for that contract. And then even once he got that contract, you look at it and go, well, yeah, it's 1 year deal. He's going to be going somewhere else next year anyway. I don't see the Bengals re-signing him. I don't think he's going to get a big contract anywhere next year anyway, because he is older. You know, he's on the wrong side of 30. But, you know, the Bengals, I don't know. They're in a tough spot with this one now, because it would benefit them in the long run to trade Trey Hendrickson and try to get some return on him.
Yep.
But at the same time, moving on from him now, you are essentially saying we're not good enough to win a Super Bowl.
We're not good
Which
enough to compete in the playoffs even.
exactly, which really, unless you can make it to the conference championship, there's not a great chance of Joe Burrow making it back into this lineup. You know, and that's where the question mark comes. Are you going to make a push, or do you start thinking for next year?
Yeah, I
I think
know Joe Burrow is expected to be back like the last like couple of weeks of the season. Like, that's kind of the timeline that they're talking about. But yeah, even then, like that's a lofty push.
it is. It is. So I mean, I do think moving Trey Hendrickson is the best idea. And there are some teams out there that are really needy for an edge rusher to the point where you could probably get above market value for Trey Hendrickson. You know, and a couple of the teams on the list that we've got here are like the Dallas Cowboys, who we've been saying all season really need an edge rusher. It's like the thing that's missing from their defense. You know, they need that edge rusher. And so go out there and get one. You know, another one, the 49ers, they just lost Bosa. So to be able to plug that hole right away with, granted, not as talented of an edge rusher, but one that's going to get the job done and keep you in that hunt for a playoff spot and possibly a conference championship contention. Like that, it's those two teams I think are the top fits for a guy like Hendrickson, because they need that so badly.
Yeah, I could also see a team like the Lions going out there and just saying, you know what, like, this is just going to propel our defense to a whole new level. Again, like this is kind of similar to like the Chiefs going after like Brees Hall for a conversation of where it's like, hey, this is a 1 year rental. That is exactly what it is. I think a team like the Patriots could also very much be a team in play for Trey Hendrickson, because you know Mike Vrabel, defensive minded guy, he's going to want that elite edge rusher. They might give him a little bit more cash at the end of the year to say, hey, stick with us. And that could be a situation where it's like, hey, we trade you, we give you that extension that you're kind of looking for. It's only going to be like a 2 year deal as opposed to anything longer than that. But yeah, I
And
think those are some teams that could very easily be in play for him as well.
oh yeah, even a Patriots rival in the Bills, they could use some defensive help. So
Mhm.
getting an edge rusher there, that could be another option. There are a lot of teams that could use a guy like a Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, and I should say on this list we have one, two, three, four edge rushers are we have 4 other edge rushers plus
Oh yeah,
Trey
4.
Hendrickson. So it is one of those things where I think it actually is probably going to be just a really good idea just to kind of run through a lot of those edge rushers right here now. I think we'll kind of talk about some of the ones. Jalen Phillips is one of the ones that I want to chat about a little bit next because he's a little bit lower on, I know myself personally. Um, Edge rusher for the Dolphins on the final year of his contract is someone I have concerns with because he's never really been an elite guy, especially after being drafted in the first round. Injuries have kind of hurt him a little bit throughout his career, but he's one of those guys that could very easily just help a team out in a really, really big way. And obviously, he's on his 5th-year option, so the Dolphins, you might as well try to get some use out of him. Teams that you can see, Colts, the Chiefs, the Eagles. I think if he goes to the Eagles, that is like best case scenario for his career because he gets Vic Fangio and he doesn't need to be the guy. And he would be really scary with the Philadelphia Eagles. But yeah, all 3 of those teams, man, I could look at that and be like, it is an option. I want my Bears to steer away from this one very badly because it just has the hallmarking of he's going to give you a little bit of production, but he's just not going to be the guy. And then they're going to focus on another position at the draft, and it's going to piss me off.
Yeah, well, it's going to be the same thing that happened with Montez Sweat, essentially.
Yep.
And that's not the route the Bears need to go. They need to get a top tier or just stand with what they've got and try to draft one next year. So yeah, I do agree with that. And Phillips going to, the Colts would be a great fit because he is in his 5th-year option. He's younger, and that gives them something where they can evaluate him the rest of the year and go, okay, is this an edge rusher that we can keep here while we build up the rest of this defense? That would be probably one of the best fits for the team. But like you said, the best fit for Phillips would be the Eagles because Vic Fangio, he's like the D-line whisperer at this point. And like anybody, you send a D lineman over there, he all of a sudden becomes a top tier player.
Yeah. Next edge rusher that I want to talk about, we're kind of going through some guys at these next 2 ones that I don't think are going to be moved. And this next guy is Alex Highsmith, edge rusher for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And now this is one that you brought up because I personally haven't heard any notions of the Steelers potentially looking to trade Alex Highsmith, but it could very much be a situation of where they could. Again, you're the Steelers guy. You're locked in a lot more with what's happening in Steelers Nation.
Well, yeah, and that's just it. Like we've talked about the Steelers and how they've got such a dominant 3-man rotation right now. TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Nick Herbig is having an explosive breakout year. And that is the reason that Alex Highsmith has started to be talked about as being a potential trade chip at the deadline. This isn't one of those ones where you're looking, oh, they're going to move him just to accrue some picks. This is more something where it's to sweeten a pot to get a wide receiver, which we know the Steelers so badly need. And so this is something where I could see him going somewhere like the Commanders in exchange for one of their wide receivers because they're like, oh, we're not going to do it this year. We're moving on from, a Deebo Samuel or even a Terry McLaurin who's been dealing with injury issues and going, well, now we've got Alex Highsmith, a starting edge rusher for the next 2 to 3 years. I think he's still got on his deal. Another one would be something like the Miami Dolphins. They're going to be wholesale sellers, but they're going to be selling guys like Jalen Waddle maybe and going, well, we need something back. And so that is where I could see Alex Highsmith being the odd man out. They just paid TJ Watt. You're looking at this breakout season from Nick Herbig and you're going, well, we're gonna pay Nick Herbig now. We can't have 3 high-paid edge rushers. Alex Highsmith, dealing with some injuries the last 2 years, he is now the odd man out on that edge rushing crew, and that's where I've seen him start to be talked about as possibly being moved somewhere. It could be, maybe it ends up being like the Chiefs for Hollywood Brown or something like that. I know it's not great. I don't like that. I would prefer him to stay. I'm not saying these are trades that I want these are trades that I think the Steelers might try to make just out of desperation to get a wide receiver back. You know,
Yeah, the reason I make that face is not because like it's like, oh, you're trading Alex Highsmith for Hollywood Brown. I think the reason that you are trading Alex Highsmith is not in terms of like trying to sweeten the pot to get a receiver. I think it's because of picks. Because again, when you bring up the Dolphins, I don't think the Dolphins are taking Alex Highsmith in that deal because again, this is a team that 'cause Alex Highsmith is a great edge rusher, man. Like he is. Like he's someone that helps a team. I think it's going to be a team more looking to try to get something like that. I think because I know like the 49ers, that could be a team that looks at that and goes like, okay, we have this guy, he comes in, helps out Robert Saleh's defense, kind of gives us that little bit of an extra boost, and him and Nick Bosa are going to be a really good tandem. I think similar situation to the Lions, that could be right there. But I think the Patriots, if you're going to see Alex Highsmith get traded, I think the Patriots are going to be a top option because it's going to be Mike Vrabel going, give me someone who's this top fledgling guy and see if he can be there. But yeah, I think it's going to be for picks and not because you're trying to get a wide receiver. I think that is a little bit. I think you're using a little bit more of your Madden trade brain as opposed to what the NFL trade
well,
brain.
and I mean, it could very well be like the picks, which they then flip those picks to get the wide receiver. You
Yes,
know, like it's
yes.
not necessarily straight up heads up for that wide receiver. You get some picks from the 49ers, you take those picks, you turn it around for, you know, a Jacoby Myers, a Jalen Waddle. That way you're not sending any of your own picks, that sort of thing. And so
Totally.
that's
Yeah.
where I mean, I just, if there's any trade chip the Steelers have, it is
It's
Alex Highsmith going into this deadline.
undoubtedly. Again, Nick Herbig has probably actually been your best edge rusher this season so far,
He has.
which is insane to say when you have TJ fucking Watt and Alex Highsmith. But
Yep.
yeah, he is that odd man out. The other edge rusher I want to talk about is that I don't think is going to get traded is Max Crosby. There's been a lot of rumors with him. The Raiders ultimately just came out and stated this week that they're not going to trade him. And I think that is a little bit of a massive mistake from the Raiders going, I think you need to start acquiring a ton of picks. If you can get that first round pick at this point in the season, you could very easily somehow trick a stupid owner like Jerry Jones into giving you the 2 first round picks that he has this year for you this season, where the Raiders somehow end up walking away with 3 first round picks in this year's draft. And they just laugh at Jerry Jones going, yeah, sure, we're losing one of the best edge rushers in the game, but Jerry Jones is overpaying because he had Micah Parsons, and instead of paying Micah Parsons, he decided to trade for Max Crosby and pay him around similar money.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't think Max Crosby gets traded at the deadline. I think if he does get traded, it's at the end of the season where it's one of those things where it's going into the draft. The Raiders like, you know what? We've had a long discussion with him. We know the season was bad, and we say, Max, we love you, but we need to move on, and we need to send you somewhere where you're going to go out and try to compete for a championship.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. And I mean, it's ultimately, I think that will fall into Max Crosby's choice. You know, it's
Yeah,
going to be similar to what we've seen with Alvin Kamara. It's like, are you willing to be traded, basically? Because we know that he's stated he wants to be a Raider for life. So that'll be an interesting one. I don't think it happens deadline either. Even end of season, I think it's very much ball is fully in Max Crosby's court. Um, the last edge rusher we want to talk about is one that I think we both think could be on the move and really should be on the move because he is also part of a dominant defensive line with a big rotation at that edge position. And that is the New York Giants with Kayvon Thibodeau.
yeah,
Like that Giants right now, they've got Thibodeau, they've got Brian Burns, and they just drafted Abdul Carter. Like this trio is so dominant. And Kayvon Thibodeau, nearing the end of his rookie deal, kind of the odd man out. Brian Burns is locked into a contract, just brought Abdul Carter. It basically feels like Carter was brought in to replace Thibodeau. And Thibodeau is talented enough. You are going to garner a good return on a trade for him. And there are, as we've discussed, since there's several here, lots of teams that really need an edge rusher, and some of them that are going to be willing to trade him in and then sign him to a long-term deal.
Yeah, with Kayvon Thibodeau, I think the biggest thing with him is the fact that the Giants obviously paid Brian Burns a bunch of money, as they should have, because he's really, really good. And then they also drafted Abdul Carter, which Abdul Carter, by many experts, were talking about him being a Micah Parsons clone, essentially coming out of Penn State. And when you look at Thibodeau, he hasn't had this miraculous bit of play throughout his career so far, but he shows the potential. And if he goes into the right system, I think at this point in his career, he could be almost similar to what we saw with Trey Hendrickson when he was with the Saints to start his career, to the Bengals, where he just takes that next step and becomes a really, really good player. And there's a lot of teams that I could see vying for him, and the Giants did pick up his 5th-year option. He's in year 4, so next year would be his 5th year. But at that point, you can't consider paying him big money, because unless the only way that I could see them paying him big money is if it's a 3-year deal saying, listen, we're going to pay you 3 years, and then it's once Abdul Carter's rookie deal is up, then your timeline with us is going to be done, and this and that, and then we're either going to have to make a decision on him and Brian Burns. But I don't know if I'm Thibodeau, if I want to be a part of that situation of just like, hey, listen, I want this long-term deal. I don't want to be this guy of where it's like, oh, maybe this, and that. I think he would be like, you know what, I would prefer to just be moved on, because I know you just drafted this guy, and this is going to be a really good rotation. And with the Giants, similar to like what you're saying with, Alex Highsmith, where the Steelers could be looking to try to acquire picks to move on. This could be a situation where the Giants ultimately look at this and go, we really want a wide receiver, and maybe a team like the Bears trades us this guy, but we get less, or we give them Thibodeau to get a guy like DJ Moore.
Yep.
Now, I think, as we've discussed, I think DJ Moore probably going to get traded at the end of the season from the Bears, as opposed to now, because I think the Bears are still trying to figure some stuff out on offense, and they want as many weapons as they can. But yeah, I think Thibodeau is, again, talking about the Bears. Patriots could be another team that we could see go really aggressively for him. Cowboys could be one of those teams. The 49ers could look to try to get him. I think he might be a little bit more of a rental for the 49ers in that sense, kind of with those, like, okay, we'll see what happens with the 5th-year option for the remaining part of next year, and then we'll kind of play it by ear then. But yeah, those are some of the guys, or the teams, I should say, are looking towards him.
Yeah, and I mean there's other teams, like you mentioned DJ Moore, and I know I got a report this morning of Brian Thomas Jr. being possibly shopped around and listening to calls that the Jags could use an edge rusher as well, and so bringing him in there,
that just puts him in
that's
the
an
exact
option.
same spot with Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen's
It
time.
would be, and so that would be a tough one for Thibodeau if he wanted to do that. But both of your NFC North rivals as well. I could see the Lions wanting a guy like Thibodeau. I could even see the Packers going, oh man, we could grab that and put him with Micah Parsons. So,
Totally.
I mean, I know you would hate it. I would hate it too. But that is a very real possibility that is out there.
Oh, without a doubt. But I think Thibodeau is one of those guys where I think we're going to see this be a very active trade deadline this year, because there's a lot of players that could potentially be on the move, and teams with a lot of good players that just need to be moved on from bad organizations or bad teams. I think Thibodeau could be kind of like the headlining type move, because I know we talked about Breece Hall. I think Breece Hall might end up being the headliner move, but I think we've discussed that ability of where we just sit back and go, I don't think Breece Hall is going to be moved by the Jets at the deadline, because they're dumb. The Giants could look at this and go, listen, we're 2-6 here at the moment. Let's cut our losses and try to acquire some more assets and try to build this team and get that little bit better, and we'll see what happens there. But yeah, Next, and you know what? Speaking of Brian Thomas Jr., again, there are a fair whack of wide receivers that we do want to talk about in three on this list. Brian Thomas Jr. was not one that had crossed my mind. Again, you had brought this to my attention this morning before we
Yeah.
even started recording our game prediction video, where it was, you know, we should have this talk of Brian Thomas Jr. with the Jags because he's been
Yeah,
horrible with the Jags this year. Shane Waldron, I will point out, but
exactly. And that's just it. It rolled across my feed this morning, and I was as surprised as you, but I was like, well, shit. I mean, if the Jags are listening to offers for Brian Thomas Jr., then I mean that would be one of the premier wide receivers because we saw how good he was last year, and for you and I seeing how badly Shane Waldron affects the wide receiver rooms, we look at this and go, Brian Thomas Jr. has not had a fall off this year. It's his coaching staff. You send him somewhere else where he has a good coaching staff, we're going to see Brian Thomas Jr. yet again elevate back to that level where last year we were talking about him being a top 10 wide receiver. And there are a lot of teams out there that really need a top tier wide receiver and who have good offensive coordinators. Top of my list is the Buffalo Bills need a wideout. Having Brian Thomas Jr. catching passes from Josh Allen with Joe Brady as the play caller, that, in my opinion, elevates the Bills to that level where we go, they might actually be able to beat the Chiefs finally in the playoffs.
yeah, that
Right.
is that's a terrifying thought because Brian
It
Thomas
is.
Jr. was like when we talked about that wide receiver draft class, it was okay. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the guy; he's going to be great. Whoever gets him,
Mhm.
there's getting an elite receiver. But then it was like, oh, but that Malik Neighbors guy, he also damn good. Like he's like Jamar Chase reincarnated, like coming
Yep.
out of LSU. And then it was like, but there's also this Rome Odunze guy who looks like a Larry Fitzgerald clone. Like, and then it was Brian Thomas Jr. in the background going like, "Hi,"
Yep.
and it was we're like, "Shut up, go away. You're great. Someone's gonna get a great wide receiver, but go away. We're not talking about you." And then last year he was the best out of all of them, and it was like,
Mhm.
oh damn, like, and he's sitting back going like, "Hi." We're like, we're sorry,
Right.
and
And I
the
mean,
fall off
that
this year has been dramatic.
it was, but we talked about it a few weeks back that we fully attribute that fall off to Shane Waldron. Look at what he did when he had DK Metcalf and JSN. Nothing. Look at what he did with the Bears last year when he had Romo Dunze, Keenan Allen, and DJ Moore. Fucking nothing. And then he goes to the Jags, and all of a sudden, Travis Hunter can't catch the ball as a rookie. Brian Thomas Jr. is getting almost killed over the middle. It's the Shane Waldron effect. He
Yep.
is a bad offensive minded play caller. He's not good.
He's
Bad.
not even calling plays for the Jags as
Right?
well.
He's just
He's just
there. He's
there.
right. He's just in the room causing problems, and it's not good. I when I saw this roll across my feed, I was like, please, please do. Brian Thomas Jr. deserves better. And that whole Jags team deserves better than Shane Waldron, really. But that's not going to change. They're not going to trade him away or fire him at this point. So, hell, trade Brian Thomas Jr. There are a lot of teams out there. I mentioned the Giants. Could you imagine? It might not be big this year, but Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors next year catching passes from Jackson Dart with Cam Scatabo in the backfield still. All of a sudden, you go, oh, wow, the Giants have an offense. You look at the 49ers who are desperate for a wide receiver right now. Brian Thomas Jr. is still on a rookie deal, so this would essentially just be a rental for the Niners, but they go, well, now we don't have to worry about the fact that Brandon Ayuk, who we signed to a big deal, hasn't played since we signed him. Now we got a wide receiver.
Yeah,
And,
well,
and with Kyle
even your
Shanahan,
Pittsburgh Steelers at this point, like getting a guy
yep,
like Brian Thomas Jr. out there with DK Metcalf because they're both similar size and stature, but they played two different games. Where,
yes.
like
Well,
Brian,
and Brian Thomas Jr. was at the top of the Steelers draft board last year where they were looking at possibly going after him, just opted to go a different direction, because they needed that offensive line help and they were like, oh, Troy Fatano's here. Yes, please.
Yeah. It
Right?
is. I'm interested to see because I don't want to say that your source is wrong because you saw that on the Sleeper app, correct?
Yeah.
Which again, Sleeper app is a phenomenal sports app for sports betting, and it's particularly for sports fantasy. Obviously, they do news as well, but I would be shocked to see Brian Thomas Jr. get traded away in year number 2,
Yeah.
even with this downward spiral that he's had this season. But I like again, I would be shocked. I really would be.
Hmm.
But if he sits back and gets traded, that is kind of a really good situation because I think both of us are sitting at the point and saying Trevor Lawrence is clearly not the guy. Like what more do we need to see before we finally sit back and say Trevor Lawrence is just an average quarterback? You're not going to do anything with him in the playoffs or win a Super Bowl with him because he's on his third head coach, second offensive guru coach, where you're expecting to try to get this elevated bit. You drafted him, generational talent, and Travis Hunter in terms of his ability, and you haven't been able to get, and he's just trying to get his guys killed, it seems like. And so yeah,
Yeah, but
it is one of those things where we just go, Brian Thomas Jr. might benefit more from that change, maybe just getting away from Shane Waldron, but also getting away from Trevor Lawrence.
maybe I still don't fault Trevor Lawrence for a lot of that. I mean, you look at the Jags. You brought it up though. Like he's been in the league what, 5 years?
Yeah.
3 head coaches.
Hmm.
Like you're changing head coaches so much, you're learning new systems over and over. What other team keeps changing quarterbacks and head coaches and the success isn't there? It's your Chicago Bears, man. Like it's the same sort of problem. They just won't commit to anything, and it's causing these issues. I still think Trevor Lawrence is better than what we've seen because he's not been given any consistency. And trading away Brian Thomas Jr. would just continue to perpetuate that cycle
Yeah.
because there it goes. Your number one wide receiver's gone. Here's Travis Hunter. Here's your new number one. And it's unfortunate he went to an organization that just can't seem to get everything on the same page. Is he elite? Is he ever going to be a top 5? No, but I still think he's a top 12 quarterback.
You and I are in very different categories about Trevor Lawrence. I've seen
Yep.
kind of enough with him over this time. But yeah, we're not just going to be talking about Trevor Lawrence because he's not on the trade
No.
block here at this point. A couple of other guys. Jalen Waddle, the Miami Dolphins wide receiver. Obviously, Tyreek Hill would have been the top of this list if he was not injured for the rest of the year. Waddle at this point, if you can get something for him, you're going to get picks for him. You're not going to get a first round pick, I think, but it would be one of those things where if you're the Bills, if you're the Bucks, you're the Steelers,
Mm-hmm.
if you're the Chiefs, you sit back and you kind of try to fire that one off. And Waddle is a really talented wide receiver. He's not one of those guys where we sit back and go like, oh, he's a top 15. I think we comfortably say he's a top 25 receiver. He's very very good. But scheme helps him. But he might take that elevated point getting away from Tua.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's just it. Like he should be one of the guys that's on the move. He does have a hefty contract. You're looking at 28.5 million a year is what you're paying him. So it's not cheap by any stretch, but I could see well beyond even those few teams we listed, the Colts, the 49ers. Like there are any number of teams that are just right there that could use that extra wide receiver. The Broncos, like
Yes.
any of these teams are potential landing spots for Jalen Waddle. He should be one of the most sought after wide receivers because you're looking at a team that they have to sell. You can't keep a $28.5 million wide receiver on your collapsing team when you don't know what your quarterback's going to look like next year, when you don't know what anything's going to look like. Your head coach, nothing. Like the Dolphins need to have a fire sale. Best offer gets Waddle, really.
Yeah. The other wide receiver that we have on our list, I think, is pretty much destined to the team that he's going to at this point. I know you hate it, but it's Jacoby Myers. He's going to the Steelers. I think there's no point in kind of arguing this point anymore. The rumor mill has just been it's Jacoby Myers and the Steelers are going to link up. And at this point, I think it's just how much are the Steelers going to give up for Jacoby Myers. I would piss myself probably live on camera if they trade a first round pick for Jacoby Myers.
Oh, so would I. He is nowhere near like if you're gonna trade a first round pick, you give it for Brian Thomas Jr.
Yep. Yep.
Like the Jacoby, like I told you, like I'm not hyped on Jacoby Myers. I've not seen a lot of great. Like I would not trade more than a fourth or a fifth for him. And I know a lot of people are talking, oh, he should get a first, a second, maybe even a third. And I'm like, no. Like if I'm the Steelers and that's what the asking price is, I hang up the phone. I don't think it's worth that. Like I look at that and I go, if you're gonna spend that on him, why don't you just throw the ball to Roman Wilson more and see what you have with him? That's my outlook on that.
Yeah, I know you are not a fan of Jacoby Myers. I am more higher on Jacoby Myers than you are. I think again, the rate he was 1,000-yard receiver last year for the Raiders. Like I think enough said at that point. Like 1,000-yard receiver when you had Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew throwing you the ball last year. That is an impressive damn feat while playing for the Raiders of all teams. And so I think him going to the Steelers would definitely take that offense and turn it up to a different level.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably going to be a second or a third round pick, though.
Yeah, well, and that's just it. I'm not arguing he would improve the offense. I just feel like that's an overpay for something that you like. You look at a Jalen Waddle or a Brian Thomas Jr., and I feel like you're getting a better quality for that price tag if that's what you're going to spend.
I hear you. I do. I think it is one of those things, but this does have like this hallmark feeling of like this is just like the trade that the Steelers are going to do. And the Bears have one of those similar trades here in a little bit that I will talk about. But yeah, like Jacoby Myers to the Steelers just feels like it's just going to happen.
Yeah.
One of the other players that we want to talk about is Tony Pollard, running back for the Titans. I don't think the Titans are going to trade him away just because they have nothing else, man. Like it's just so bad that why make Cam Ward's life 10 times harder than it already is, and his life is pretty difficult here at the moment playing quarterback for the Titans.
100%, but again, it's the Titans. They do some dumb things over the years, and you look at the running back market for what we're seeing, and there's not a lot that's really going to be available outside of if Breece Hall's available. There's not a lot there, and there are some teams that really need a running back that I think will pick up the phone and call Tennessee and go, hey, look, what would it take for you to send us Tony Pollard? They don't even need him long term. Like we talked about, the Chiefs kind of need an extra running back. Tony Pollard's not great, but he is serviceable and would help add an extra body to that Chiefs offense. Other teams that really need a running back, the Chargers, they're running on their fourth string quarter or running back at this point. Even the Cardinals running on their like fourth and fifth string running backs, and they're not impressive. We've seen a lot of bad things out of the running room in Arizona. So there are some potential there. I think it would be silly for the Titans to trade him unless a team calls and offers them something they just can't refuse. And they go, oh, okay, look, it screws us for this year, but we're screwed anyway. We're getting a couple of picks, or we're getting a higher pick than what Tony Pollard is worth because a team is desperate for this. We got to take it.
Yeah. And that's exactly what that's going to have to ultimately be, where it's just one of those things. A similar situation to Kevin Zeitler, the offensive guard for the Titans. I think Zeitler is a little bit more likely to get traded away because it's going to be one of those things where he is a capable offensive guard, and there's going to be a team Chargers that need more offensive linemen up front, and they are going
Mhm.
to be willing to pay like a third or a fourth round pick for someone like that, so they can just get that little bit extra to keep their team going throughout the future.
And I think that'll be a bit of a domino effect too. I think if we see Zeitler go, that's when we also see Pollard. Because I think if one goes, I think in that specific order though.
Yeah, maybe I would need to see what the Titans, like how committed they are to that. The other
Mm.
position that I do want to talk about is the cornerback position, because we have a couple of corners that are likely going to be on the move this coming year. Two that I think are more of a certain to be traded away, and then one that's maybe kind of like that ultimate little bit of a question mark. Pardon me. We'll start with that question mark, and that's Trayvon Diggs, the Dallas Cowboys corner, where a little bit more higher paid guy, is kind of more this up and down type of a player. And areas that I could see him going are the Colts, just because they're a team that's looking to try to just get that better. He's a ball hawking type corner. He has a couple more years left on his contract, and it would make sense for him to go to a team like the Colts. A team that I've heard a lot of rumors with Tony, or not with Tony Pollard, Trayvon Diggs, is my Chicago Bears. Obviously, the Bears have dealt with a ton of injuries in the secondary this season. Again, we talked about it with, Kyler Gordon being out on IR as of this morning, and Tyreek Stevenson is missing this week, and Jalen Johnson has been out for the entirety of the year. The connection there is obviously Al Harris, the corners coach for the Bears, has done magnificent work with that secondary and just turned them into the best ball hawking unit in all of football. And Trayvon Diggs benefited from that. I think the cap space would be the biggest issue with that sort of trade. But yeah, I do think that is a little bit more of like that question mark type move. I don't think that would happen, just because I don't think Jerry Jones would trade him to another NFC North team.
No, that, and I think Trayvon Diggs has been on and off the injury report repeatedly this season too, so that is a bit of a risk.
Yep.
Especially for a Bears team that's already dealing with cornerbacks that are hurt. Like, do we want to bring another one in that might play for a week and then end up hurt as well?
Exactly. The next corner I want to talk about is Reek Woolen with the Seattle Seahawks, where his rookie season, it looked like we had the next coming of Richard Sherman on our hands, where it was like, damn, the Seahawks found another one. And
Mm-hmm.
Mike McDonald just doesn't seem to like him and just doesn't seem to trust him. And it feels like Reek Woolen just needs a change of scenery. And I know on our list we have the Patriots and Dolphins both looking like teams, but I actually think the two more likely teams that I could see him going to, and the team that I actually think he's more likely going to, is the team I think will be second for one I say. I think the Bears could be a fairly good option for him to go to again, bringing in that change of scenery, putting him in a Dennis Allen offense with Al Harris as the secondaries coach, and kind of really getting things set up on that side. I think that'd be a good change of scenery. But the place I think would be really, really smart to trade for him is the Las Vegas Raiders. Because that Pete Carroll connection. The Raiders are so bad in the secondary. What's the risk of going after a guy like Reek Woolen? He's big, he knows Pete Carroll's system, and it gives him that change of scenery.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it would make sense because he's young as well. So it's something where you can, once his rookie deal's up, you give him a longer term contract and he kind of becomes the corner piece of your secondary that you build around to match with Max Crosby in that D line if Max stays.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. And
But I mean, that being said, like, I have heard a lot of rumors with it being the Dolphins in some sort of a trade for either a Devin Achan or a Jalen Waddle just to bolster their offensive side. Because it does sound like Reek Woolen is the odd man out in Seattle, and he will likely be on the move at the deadline.
yeah.
It's just really going to be the return. Who's
Yeah.
going to give the Seahawks the most that either is going to help them now or give them a haul that they can go, yeah, we can draft enough guys from this that it makes up for it.
Totally. And now for the trade, similar to with Jacoby Myers to your Pittsburgh Steelers, the one that feels pretty certain like it's going to happen for the Chicago Bears, especially with the news coming out this week, is Alontae Taylor, the corner from the New Orleans Saints,
Hmm.
going to the Bears. There's been a lot of talk with this one, and Alontae Taylor makes sense for the Bears. Again, has played with Dennis Allen, knows the system, and is a reliable corner, and is someone that, is in the final year of his deal. You're going to be giving the Saints something like a sixth round pick for him. And with the injuries that have ultimately happened for the Bears, again, if Tyreek Stevenson is out for maybe a little bit longer term, you can have that Alontae Taylor come in and kind of be that number two, Deshaun Wright on the other side, Josh Blackwell at nickel. But even if Tyreek Stevenson does come back and you do make that deal, well, it gives you just that more depth in that secondary room. And this one is starting to feel like it's going to happen sooner rather than later for the Chicago Bears here at this point.
Yeah, it just makes sense. The Bears kind of do need to fill in that secondary with some more depth just because of the rash of injuries they've had this year. So it would
Yeah.
not shock me to see that.
And like I've heard a bunch of Bears fans talk about trying to go after some of these top fledgling guys, and I'm like, we don't need corners. We need
Mm-mm.
corners now at this moment due to injuries, but I don't want to get a guy that's going to be a long-term piece because, again, Jalen Johnson is here. When he's back, he's the best corner in football. Tyreek Stevenson has looked great this season. He just needs to get back to health.
Mhm.
If Kyler Gordon is healthy, like I've already said, he's the engine that moves this defense.
Yeah.
And so you don't really need some of those guys. And again, I think some of the other injuries that the Bears have ultimately dealt with, Deshaun Wright has been phenomenal for the Bears this year.
Mhm.
There's a guy that I'm forgetting the name of that was a fifth round pick in the same year as Tyreek Stevenson that was playing at the exact same level as Tyreek Stevenson ever since they've come in. And they use those guys in a rotation, which has made it really, really fun to watch. And so the Bears have corners, but yeah, at this point, we have a couple more guys on our list here at the moment. But the
I would say more with what these last few guys are. It's a team that really is going to need to make a move, and it's the Chargers. The
yeah,
Chargers are going to need some offensive line help. They have been dealing with injuries. Yes, they got Joe Alt back, but they're still keep getting hurt on that O line. And so there are a few guards that are likely going to be on the market that we think the Chargers are probably going to be the front runners for. You mentioned Kevin Zeitler, some of the others on that list, John Simpson, Joel Bitonio with the Browns, Wyatt Teller with the Browns, because we know that Browns are going to be sellers. So it would not be a shock to see the Chargers make a move for one of these guys at the very least, just to sort of fill out some depth on their O line.
yeah, and that's kind of it for our trade talk here today. We're doing something that we haven't done since week 5 of the season, just because we have been quite busy as of late, and that is our top 5 and our bottom 5. And starting out with our top 5, man, this has been a team that, again, you and I, we have discussed our top 5 and bottom 5 every single week. Again, with us being able to work with each other again, that makes it really easy just to have that daily conversation about that. But our number one team is a team that we have been trying to keep off of the top 5, but also off of the top of the list, mainly because of one of their fans. We just hate this person so much. Funny enough, I
Yeah.
saw one of his videos this week and I reported it for nudity to hopefully try to get his channel taken down. Um, yeah, it's the Indianapolis Colts, man. They have been the best team in football right now.
They,
I
they
don't.
have the best record.
It's disgusting.
It's bizarre and unexpected. Like they were the laughing stock coming into training camp because they were having a quarterback battle between Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. Somehow Daniel Jones left New York and is the exact quarterback that the New York Giants thought they were reaching to draft when they took him. And he is just doing Manning-esque things with the Colts instead of with the Giants. It's so strange to see. And, we talked earlier about Jonathan Taylor just being an MVP level candidate at the running back position right now. He is the workhorse of this offense, and it's what is allowing everything else to come together.
Yeah, Colts have been great. Our second team up on this list is the Detroit Lions. This is a team that coming into the season, I think we maybe had a little bit lower just because of their coordinators, obviously both leaving, but they haven't missed a beat ever since week 1. They have
Exactly.
been playing really, really well.
Yeah, they've slowly been getting back to form and finding their game, and it still does not look the same as it did under Ben Johnson, but it looks like they still are going to be able to be competitive in the NFC and have a shot at that championship game. Coming up at number 3, they finally went onto our list. They didn't look good, but then they started getting pieces back. They got Worthy back. They got Rashee Rice back, and the Chiefs are on the climb. If these other teams start losing some games, we're going to be looking at the Chiefs being number 1 again before long, unfortunately.
It's inevitable. The Chiefs are 100% going to make the number 1 spot on our list again, and I've been saying this since like week 4. I said the Chiefs are inevitable, and I know you were kind of sitting back and saying like, let's temper expectations here, buddy. They're still not looking great. I'm like, just wait. They're starting to look better. And then Rice came back, and it was like, hi, we're going back to the Super Bowl.
The question, were they still going to be that good with Rice back? Is Rice still going to be that good? Because he missed a lot of time. So that was the big question mark.
No, totally. And yeah, I didn't have that question mark for the Chiefs at this point. But yeah, this is a team, expect them to go to the Super Bowl. That's what I'm telling people is expect them to go right back, because if you don't, all you're doing is setting yourself up for disappointment. Our team 4th on this list is a team that has been kind of going up and down on this top 5, and that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Again, facing the Lions last week, where the refs definitely played a little bit of a factor in this game, but frankly, the Bucs also just didn't play that well in that game in entirety. But they are still a damn good unit. I think they're going to absolutely dominate the Saints this week, and we'll see them kind of get a little bit more back to form.
Yeah, and I mean it's disappointing to see so many people discount Baker Mayfield in the MVP talks due to one bad game. When you look at the rest of the league and you go, who else is it going to be then? Because everybody else has had a bad game here or there except for Daniel Jones. Weird, right? Baker's going to get back to form. We talked about it in our game picks. We both think it's going to be a 4 to 6 touchdown game for Baker, like 300 to 400 yards. He's going to get back to form. The Bucs are number 4 right now. They may move up next week, depending on how the other teams do. Coming in at our number 5 spot it might surprise some people, not the Philadelphia Eagles. It's the LA Rams. And that is just because the Rams are a more complete unit altogether. Even missing Puka Nacua, they still are outperforming teams. They are a cohesive unit, and they don't have a head coach that tries to lose them games like the Philadelphia Eagles do in Nick Sirianni. That Sirianni is really the reason that the Eagles are not on our top 5.
Yeah, I don't think they're the more complete unit. I think they're the more consistent unit. Is kind of what I have with the Rams.
Yeah, just more cohesive. It's all together. They're all rowing in the same direction. Whereas with the Eagles, it's like everybody's rowing in one direction, and Nick Sirianni has a paddle that he's just slapping in the water, causing problems.
Nick Sirianni has a motor on the other end, and it's going that way while everyone's paddling that way, is essentially what's happening. Yeah. So again, it's not like the Rams don't deserve to be on this top 5, even if it wasn't a debate with the Eagles. I've been saying most of this year the top 5 is harder than the bottom 5, just because there's a lot of teams that can kind of slot into this category for one reason or another, and teams that aren't on this list for one reason or another. But yeah, bottom 5, starting out with our 5th worst spot, it's the Raiders, man. Like this is a team that got embarrassed by the Chiefs last week, and they look all sorts of bad. And if it wasn't for 4 teams directly above the Raiders, they would be the worst team in football by a large margin. That just shows how bad these next four teams are.
Well, exactly. And the next one on that list, just barely worse than the Raiders, but they ass. It's the Tennessee Titans. They got Cam Ward, and they got Tony Pollard, who is their best playmaker outside of that, and then nothing. The Titans are bad.
Yeah, Titans are pure dog shit, but somehow they are better than the New Orleans Saints. I don't know how.
Because they have a quarterback.
Yeah, yep, yep.
Yeah.
New Orleans just looks bad, man. Like this is a team that we expected to be the worst overall team in football this year, and they're proving exactly what we expected them to be this season. And there's only so much you can do. But our next team is
what's wild though is they're the worst team in football, but they're not currently sitting with the first overall pick. You know, because these other two teams in a division together, we get a game. I think it's the first or second week of December that it's likely going to be a game for the number 1 overall pick. And first up at the 31st spot in the league is the Miami Dolphins, which are just a complete dumpster fire. We talked about it at length throughout this episode that the Dolphins need to be having a fire sale right now before the deadline. And if they don't, I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. We've even talked about it at this point that we're shocked that McDaniels is still the coach. And so if it wasn't for the New York Jets, the Miami Dolphins would be here. But the fact that the Jets, like, again, the Jets have been the worst team on our list for probably the last couple weeks, even though we haven't talked about the top 5. Mm-hmm. But the fact that the Jets owner went out last week and said we would be a lot better of a team if Justin Fields wasn't playing quarterback for us, to then immediately have Tyrod Taylor be out this week with injury, to immediately have Justin Fields go out and start as a quarterback again this week, is enough to just tell you that they're the worst team in football. Also, the Jets have no wins this year, and they're the only team without a win this season, so by default, they have to be here.
100%. And honestly, with the disrespect that was shown, Justin Fields, stop taking hits, man. Don't take any more hits for this team. If there's nothing there, run outside the pocket, throw the ball away. 3 and out, just 3 and outs. Just who cares? Don't take bad hits for this team and for an owner that doesn't respect you and clearly doesn't want you there. You know, why? You can't just throw the game away because like a petty guy would just take the snap and spike it.
Just throw an interception to the team every single play.
No, because that makes him look worse. At this point, I don't think he's thrown an interception this year.
I think he has.
Has he? Because Justin Fields, he's looked probably the best player on this team when he's got his running buddy at wide receiver out there. Beyond that, it's like,
son of a bitch, he hasn't thrown an interception. Yeah, he hasn't.
Right?
Oh.
Like, he's been playing clean football. It's just he has nothing.
Yeah. No. It is. It's Jets are a mess, man. But that is our top 5 and bottom 5 this week. Moving into another segment that has been kind of a little bit on delayed as of recently. It is this or that, and again, no one's going to be surprised. Trade focused. Again, it's a trade focused type episode. My biggest question, or my first question for you, is which one of our teams is going to make the bigger trade? And again, you being the Steelers and me being the Bears fan here, which one of our teams do you think is going to make the bigger splash this trade deadline?
Well, I think it'll be the Steelers just because the Bears don't really need to make a splash. Unless the Bears can find a way to get Breece Hall, then they make the bigger splash. Because that will be the biggest splash of anybody if they can do that. But as we discussed, we don't think the Jets are intelligent enough to realize they should move on from Breece Hall and get something back for him. That's the problem. Other than that, the Bears, like we talked about, they kind of need a little bit of depth at the cornerback position. Other than that, the Bears aren't that bad. If they can get somebody else in the front seven, but again, it's more for depth unless they can get Max Crosby away from the Raiders or something like that. Whereas the Steelers, they need a wide receiver too. If they're going to do anything with this season, they have to make a splash and go get a wide receiver too. They may also be that team that makes a splash and trades Alex Highsmith away to a team to get a haul back that nobody expected. You know, there's more options, I think, and more directions the Steelers could take to make said splash. Whereas the Bears, they've got a lot of good talent at a lot of positions. It really right now is just learn and grow with a new head coach, a new defensive coordinator. The Bears are learning and growing. They don't need to make that splash. The Steelers do, or else they're just going to keep treading water.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Bears have the potential to make the bigger splash with guys like either Kayvon Thibodeau, Breece Hall, Max Crosby. I think the trade that the Bears will make, again, we talked about it earlier in the podcast, Alontae Taylor, I think is going to be probably the corner coming over to the Bears due to the injuries. But that's not a big splash. That the splash that is we are so decimated at this position. We need someone who knows Dennis Allen and knows his system and can easily come in and be serviceable for us. With the Steelers, again, they're trading for Jacoby Myers. It's not been announced yet. It hasn't been any formal discussions, but we all know it's going to happen. And that arguably is a bigger trade than anything the Bears can do at the moment. And we might be shocked by the Steelers when they end up trading for like a Brian Thomas Jr. or a Chris Olave or a Jalen Waddle type player. And we'll see what happens. But yeah, I agree with you. I do think the Steelers are going to make the bigger splash, but the Bears sure as fuck have the bigger potential for it.
Oh, yes, definitely. My first one for you, again, trade related. Who should be the most sought after, most wanted wide receiver at the trade deadline? One on this list that we didn't even talk about, and then two others. So should it be Chris Olave with the Saints, Jacoby Myers from the Raiders, or should it be Jalen Waddle with the Miami Dolphins?
I think it 100% should be Jalen Waddle. I think Jalen Waddle has proven that he is the best and most consistent receiver out of all three of those guys. I think Chris Olave has the talent to be the best out of all three of those guys, but the problem with the injuries and staying healthy has been a massive, massive concern. And we have seen what wide receivers and injuries, especially due to the concussion type thing, does to a wide receiver, Antonio Brown. But yeah, I think Jalen Waddle, he's someone who's already paid here at the moment. He's consistently good, and any team looking to try to build with their quarterback, I think, like I said, like a team like the Patriots would be really smart to go after that. I don't think the Dolphins would trade him to the Patriots, not wanting to see him twice a year. I think the Steelers could be another option. Hell, Chiefs could just say, fuck it, let's just get another young wide receiver to just catch passes from Patrick Mahomes. But yeah, 100% Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, I agree. It should be Jalen Waddle. It's almost too bad that the Dolphins likely won't trade it within the division because both the Patriots and the Bills are probably two of the best landing spots for Jalen Waddle.
Yeah. My next question to you is, which team sells the most players here at the deadline? Is it going to be the New York Jets, the Miami Dolphins, the Tennessee Titans, the New Orleans Saints, or the Las Vegas Raiders?
Well, I think it should be the Miami Dolphins. They should be the ones that are selling the most because they have a lot of large contracts that aren't doing anything for them. So they should be the largest sellers. I think it will probably be the Tennessee Titans, though. I think the Titans are going to just clean house because that's kind of what the Titans have done before. You know, we've seen it several times from them where they're 1-6, 1-7, and they go, fuck it. And they just trade everybody away, get a bunch of picks or a bunch of other players that aren't going to do anything for them, and repeat the process over and over and over.
I agree with you, but I also disagree with you because I actually think it's going to be a tie between the Miami Dolphins and the Tennessee Titans. Obviously, they have the most guys available, but I think at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, I think you are going to see both of these two teams probably be equal in the amount of players that they trade away at the deadline, just because both of these two teams are just need to move on. I think the Saints are probably going to be a second in that one, with the Raiders being third, and then probably the Jets coming in at that fourth spot.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. My last one for you is, this is a team that we didn't talk about at all, players that we didn't talk about at all, but you look at their standings in their division and in their conference, and the manner in which they've been losing games lately, and it really makes me wonder, should the Minnesota Vikings be sellers at the trade deadline this year?
Yeah, there was a report that I saw yesterday that I immediately read and went, okay, let's stop this stuff. Again, it's not coming from anyone who's official or high end, but they were talking about how Justin Jefferson wants to be traded from the Minnesota Vikings. I'm like, he's not gonna get traded from the Vikings, guys. Like, let's cut this crap. I am going to say no for the Minnesota Vikings, just for the simple reason of, this is a team that is still trying to figure out some stuff. Again, having a rookie quarterback who hasn't, not a rookie, but he's essentially a rookie, in JJ McCarthy, hasn't played this year, really. He's been injured, and you're kind of going with this problem of like, oh, we have a backup quarterback in Carson Wentz who can't hit water if he was falling out of a boat into the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean. Like, it is one of those things where he is just bad, and they're kind of just weathering the storm here at the moment. And I don't think the panic meter is there for the Minnesota Vikings. If they had lost maybe 2 more games this season, I think we could see this potentially be a yes. But I'm at the point now where I'm saying that Minnesota Vikings shouldn't be sellers. They should just stay right where they are and just try to figure out what this team is. I don't think they should be buyers. I don't think they should be sellers. I think they should just be one of those teams this year that just does nothing.
That's fair. I look at it and I go, if JJ McCarthy's not going to play, then maybe they should sell. And I'm not talking selling big. Like, you don't trade Justin Jefferson away. You don't trade a lot of the pieces on defense away. But you look at your running back room and you go, well, Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason. Maybe if somebody wants one of them and they're willing to hand us a couple of picks or something like that, maybe we do. I even look at Jordan Addison and I go, that could garner a hefty price. Yes, it's nice having the 1-2 there, but you've got some teams out there like the Buffalo Bills that would probably pay a pretty high price to get a guy like Jordan Addison on their team. And we've seen the Vikings and the Bills make a move like that before with Stephon Diggs. Granted, Stephon Diggs was a problem. Addison is not. It was just a thought I had. Even TJ Hawkinson, dealt with some injuries. It might be one of those things where you go, we're sitting in the basement of our division. We're not going to blow it up. We still got a great defense. We still have Justin Jefferson. We're going to keep one of our running backs. Maybe we should try and accrue some extra picks to continue building for the future, especially if JJ McCarthy is not going to play anymore. If you're riding it out with Carson Wentz, I don't see good things happening for this team.
Yeah. But that is it for this or that. And I think at this point, we are also finishing up here on this week's edition of the podcast. Again, a very, very trade focused, because we are approaching the trade deadline. Again, I know next week we'll probably be back with a little bit less trade heavy talk, but there will probably still be some trade talk, because we'll be getting even that much closer. And so, yeah, but thank you all very much for watching. For Sterling, I'm Brendan, saying thank you all very much. Peace.